Silence has a strange way of frightening people. Not loud peoples, not confident peoples, weak people, people who have spent their entire lives hiding from themselves. Have you ever noticed how uncomfortable someone becomes when you stop explaining yourself? When you stop defending every decision? When you stop chasing every argument? When you answer with calm instead of emotion? Suddenly they become restless. They ask if something is wrong. They accuse you of changing. They tell others you have become cold. But nothing is actually wrong. For the first time, they simply cannot read you. And what people cannot control, they often fear. That is one of the oldest truths about human nature. Most people are not disturbed by your words. They are disturbed by your silence. Because words give them something to fight. Silence gives them nothing. It becomes a mirror. And many people spend their entire lives avoiding mirrors. Not the kind hanging on a walls. The kind that reflects the soul. A person addicted to noise cannot tolerate stillness. Not because stillness is empty. Because stillness reveals everything they have been trying to escape. The loneliness. The insecurity. The constant need to be noticed. The endless hunger for validation. When there is noise, those wounds remain hidden. When silence arrives, they finally hear themselves. And that terrifies them. The loudest people are often running from the quietest truths. Most people believe silence is the absence of communication. It is not. Silence communicates more than endless conversation ever could. It says, I no longer need to convince you. I no longer need your approvals. I no longer need to win this argument. I no longer need to explain who I am. Those are dangerous messages to anyone who survives by controlling others. Because control depends on reaction. Manipulation depends on emotion. Drama depends on participation. Remove your participation, and the entire game begins to collapse. A Shaolin monk once welcomed a traveler who insulted him for nearly an hour. The traveler shouted, mocked him, questioned his discipline. The monk remained completely silent. Finally exhausted, the traveler asked, why won't you defend yourself? The monk smiled. If someone offers you a gift and you refuse to accept it, to whom does the gift belong? The traveler lowered his head. The answer was obvious. To the one who brought it. Hatred works the same way. So does anger. So does insult. Not every emotion handed to you must become yours. That is one of the greatest forms of self-mastery. Most people never learn it. Instead, they accept every emotional gift placed into their hands. Someone criticizes them. They carry it. Someone insults them. They carry it. Someone misunderstands them. They carry it. By the end of life, they are carrying the emotional weight of hundreds of other people. No wonder they feel exhausted. No wonder peace feels impossible. The moment you stop collecting other people's emotions, your own peace begins. Human psychology explains why silence feels so powerful. People unconsciously study your reactions. Every expression, every word, every defense, every apology, every emotional response becomes information. They learn what hurts you, what excites you, what frightens you, what controls you. Without realizing it, many people hand over the blueprint to their own mind. But silence changes their equation. When your reactions become fewer, your freedom becomes greater. Not because silence makes you mysterious, because it makes you difficult to manipulate. Think about the people who have affected you most. Were they always the loudest? Usually not. Often they were calm, measured, steady. They spoke little, but every word carried weight. Why? Because silence gives value to speech. A river that floods constantly destroys the land. A river that flows with purpose gives life. Words are the same. People who constantly speak often weaken the meaning of what they say. The disciplined person understands restraint. Not every thought deserves a voice. Not every opinion deserves expression. Not every battle deserves attention. Marcus Aurelius practiced this inwardly every day. He reminded himself that another person's behavior belonged to them. His responsibility was his own character. Imagine how different your life would become if you truly lived this way. Imagine hearing criticism without absorbing it. Imagine facing rejection without questioning your worth. Imagine being misunderstood without desperately correcting everyone. That kind of freedom seems almost impossible today. Because modern life rewards constant reaction. React online. React instantly. React emotionally. React publicly. The world profits from your inability to remain still. Because a reactive mind is easily influenced. A calm mind is not. That is why silence has become so rare. And anything rare becomes powerful. The person who masters silence soon masters themselves, yet silence is often misunderstood. People confuse silence with weakness, with fear, with avoidance. Sometimes it is. But there is another kind of silence. A silence born from strength. The silence of someone who has nothing left to prove. The silence of someone who knows their worth. The silence of someone who understands that truth does not become stronger because it is repeated louder. A mountain never argues with the wind. It simply remains. That image has survived for thousands of years because it reflects something eternal. Strength rarely announces itself. Weakness almost always does. The weakest person in the room usually speaks first. He interrupts first. Defends first. Explains first. The strongest often observe. Listen. Wait. Not because they have nothing to say. Because they understand timing. A sword remains in its sheath until the moment it is needed. No warrior waves it constantly to prove he owns one. Life works the same way. If you constantly feel the need to prove your intelligence, your kindness, your success, your value, ask yourself one difficult question. Who are you trying to convince? Others or yourself? Because that answer may reveal a wound you have carried for years without ever seeing it. The answer is almost always the same. You are trying to convince the version of yourself that still believes worth must be earned through other people's approval. That version was not born. It was created. Perhaps as a child, when silence in the home meant danger instead of peace. Perhaps you learned that love arrived only after achievement. Perhaps every mistake brought criticism instead of guidance. Perhaps you discovered that being accepted required becoming someone else. Slowly, without realizing it, you formed a habit. Speak more. Explain more. Apologize more. Prove more. Perform more. Because somewhere deep inside, you believed one terrible lie. If I stop proving myself, I will stop being enough. That lie follows millions of people into adulthood. It enters relationships, careers, friendships, even moments of solitude. You see it every day. Someone posts every achievement online. Not because they are proud, because they fear being forgot. Someone argues endlessly, not because they seek truth, because silence feels like losing. Someone cannot tolerate being misunderstood, because misunderstanding awakens an old wound of rejection. The behavior changes. The wound remains the same. This is why weak people fear silence. Not merely because you become quiet, because your silence exposes everything they have spent years trying to hide with noise. The person addicted to attention mistakes silence for rejection. That is why your calm unsettles them. You no longer chase. You no longer react. You no longer explain every decision. And suddenly they begin asking questions. Why are you acting differently? Are you angry? What's wrong? Nothing is wrong. You simply stopped feeding a pattern. Patterns have invisible rules. One person provokes. The other reacts. One criticizes. The other defends. One controls. The other obeys. Remove your reaction, and the pattern collapses. This is why emotional maturity feels threatening. It interrupts old systems. A bamboo grove teaches this lesson beautifully. During a storm, the tallest bamboo bends with the wind. It does not shout at the storm. It does not resist every gust. It remains flexible. When the wind passes, it stands exactly where it belongs. The rigid tree often breaks. People believe strength is hardness. Nature disagrees. Real strength is composed, adaptable, patient. Still, the person who cannot remain silent often believes every emotion deserves expression. But emotions are visitors, not rulers. A Stoic understands this. You can acknowledge anger without speaking from it. You can notice disappointment without becoming it. You can feel sadness without surrendering your judgment. That is self-command, not emotional suppression, not pretending nothing hurts, but refusing to let temporary feelings become permanent decisions. Master the moment before the moment masters you. That single habit separates peaceful people from restless ones. Most suffering is not created by events. It is created by immediate reaction. Someone insults you. The insult lasts 5 seconds. Your thoughts continue for 5 days. Someone ignores your message. The silence lasts 1 afternoon. Your imagination creates 20 different stories before sunset. Someone disagrees with you. The disagreement ends. The argument continues inside your head long after everyone else has moved on. This is the prison of overthinking. And overthinking rarely begins with reality. It begins with interpretation. Weak minds fill silence with fear. Strong minds fill silence with observation. There is an enormous difference. Imagine standing beside a still lake. One person sees peace. Another sees emptiness. The lake has not changed. Only that observer. Life works the same way. Silence reveals the condition of the mind observing it. If silence feels unbearable, it is often because something inside is asking to be heard. Not by the world, by you. That is why so many people keep themselves constantly distracted. Music, television, podcast, scrolling, messages, notifications, a conversation, more conversation, anything to avoid 5 uninterrupted minutes with themselves. The modern world has become incredibly efficient at helping people escape their own minds. But escape has a cost. You cannot outrun yourself forever. Eventually, life removes the distractions. a failed relationship, a sleepless night, a painful loss, an empty house, a long drive, a hospital room, a quiet mornings, and suddenly the noise disappears. Only you remains. The question is, will you recognize the person sitting there? Or will you meet a stranger? The greatest distance in life is not between two people. It is between a person and their true self. A Shaolin disciple once asked his master why monks spent so much time sitting in silence. The young man expected an answer about enlightenment. Instead, the master picked up a bowl of muddy water. He placed it on the ground. Then he said nothing. Minutes passed. The disciple grew impatient. Finally, the master pointed to the bowl. The mud had settled. The water had become clear. Your mind works the same way, no lecture. No philosophy. No complicated explanation. Only a bowl of waters. How different would your life become if you stopped stirring your own thoughts every hour? If you stopped replaying old conversations? Stopped predicting disasters? Stopped imagining rejection before it happened? Stopped fighting battles that existed only in your mind? Stillness is not doing nothing. Stillness is allowing clarity to return. Marcus Aurelius understood this deeply. He did not seek peace by controlling the world around him. He sought peace by governing the world within him. That is why silence was never weakness to the Stoics. It was training. A disciplined mind does not need constant expression. It needs constant awareness. And awareness changes everything. Because once you begin observing your own mind instead of obeying it, you notice something astonishing. The loudest voice inside you is not always telling the truth. And learning not to believe every thought you think may be the beginning of real freedom. The mind is a convincing storyteller. It can transform a delayed reply into rejection, a stranger's expression into judgment, a moment of silence into abandonment. It invents stories with remarkable confidence. And the tragedy is not that the mind creates them. The tragedy is that we believe them without question. Most people are not imprisoned by reality. They are imprisoned by interpretation. A weak mind cannot tolerate unanswered questions. It rushes to fill every empty space. Why didn't they call? They must be angry. Why did they look away? They don't respect me. Why is their room so quiet? I must have done something wrong. Notice what happened. Nothing actually occurred. Only silence. Yet the mind transformed silence into suffering. This is why silence terrifies weak people. It forces them to face the one voice they cannot escape. Their own. The undisciplined mind turns silence into fear. The disciplined mind turns silence into wisdom. Have you ever sat alone without reaching for your phone? Not for 2 minutes. For an hour. No music. No messages. No distractions. Just you. Many people cannot. Not because they lack time. Because they fear what they might discover. Silence removes performance. There is no audience to impress. No conversation to control. No image to maintain. Only truth remains. And truth has a way of stripping away every mask. That is why so many people confuse busyness with purpose. As long as they remain occupied, they never have to ask the uncomfortable questions. Am I living according to my values? Or according to other people's expectations? Do I actually enjoy this life? Or have I simply become accustomed to it? Am I chasing success? Or escaping emptiness? These questions do not appear in noise. They appear in stillness. And once they appear, they refuse to disappear. A young warrior once climbed a mountain to seek advice from an old hermit. "I want to become fearless," he said. The old man handed him a broom. "First sweep the temple," the warrior felt insulted. "I came for wisdom, not chores," the hermit smiled. "Then sweep your mind first." Confused, the young man obeyed. Day after day he swept the stone floors in complete silence. At first his thoughts screamed. He replayed arguments, imagined victories, remembered failures, planned his future, regretted his past. His mind never stopped moving. But after many days, something changed. The dust settled, not only on the floors, within him. For the first time in years, he heard birds he had never noticed. He felt the wind. He watched sunlight move across the stone. Nothing outside had changed. His attention had. When he returned to the hermit, the old man simply asked, "Are you still looking for fearlessness?" The young warrior smiled. "No, I was looking for myself. That is the gift of silence. Not perfection. Presence. Modern life steals presence from us. Every notification competes for attention. Every headline demands emotion. Every opinion insists on a response. Every platform rewards speed over wisdom. The result: a restless generation. Always informed. Rarely aware. Always connected. Rarely present. Always speaking. Rarely listening. Not only to others, to themselves. The mind that cannot rest becomes a servant to everything that demands its attention. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire. Imagine the noise surrounding his life. Wars, politics, betrayals, illness, responsibility beyond anything most of us will ever experience. Yet again and again, he returned inwards. Not because the world became quieter, because he understood something timeless. Peace is never found by waiting for the world to become silent. It is found by refusing to let the world's noise rule your inner life. This is the Stoic's hidden strength. He does not wait for calm. He creates it. Inside. Weak people expect peace to arrive from outside. When circumstances improve. When people understand them. When relationships become easier. When life becomes fair. The Stoic knows better. He builds an inner fortress before the storm arrives. Because storms always arrive. People disappoint you. Plans fail. Health changes. Fortunes shift. Time takes everything eventually. Impermanence is not the exception. It is the rule. If your peace depends on permanence, your peace will always be temporary. A calm mind is not the reward for an easy life. It is the result of disciplined practice. This is where Shaolin wisdom and Stoicism quietly meet. Both teach mastery before victory, discipline before freedom, stillness before action. Neither promises a painless life. Both promise that suffering can become a teacher instead of a prison. There is another reason silence frights weak people. Silence cannot be manipulated easily. Someone who constantly reacts is predictable. Press the right button, and they respond. Offer praise, and they become attached. Offer criticism, and they lose control. Ignore them, and they chase. But what happens when someone remains calm? The manipulator loses their map. They cannot predict you. They cannot pull emotional strings that are no longer connected. This is why emotionally mature people often appear mysterious. Not because they are hiding something, because they have stopped broadcasting everything. They no longer leak their peace into every conversation. They guard it quietly, deliberately, without apology. And those who depend on emotional chaos often mistake that discipline for distance. They call it coldness, pride, detachment. But they misunderstand the difference between a closed heart and a peaceful one. A peaceful heart does not withdraw from people. It simply refuses to surrender itself to unnecessary conflict. There is enormous strength in that choice. And once you experience it, something unexpected begins to happen. The conversations that once exhausted you no longer hold power. The arguments that once consumed your nights lose their grip. The opinions that once controlled your emotions become background noise. Not because the world changed, but because you did. And that transformation leads to one final lesson, perhaps the most liberating lesson of all: silence is not merely something you practice. Silence is someone you become. Silence is not merely something you practice. Silence is someone you become. There comes a point in every person's life when silence is no longer an effort. It becomes your nature. You stop replying to every insult. You stop correcting every misunderstanding. You stop chasing every person who walks away. Not because you stopped caring, because you finally learned where your energy belongs. This is the transformation that few people ever reach. Most people believe maturity means learning how to speak better. Real maturity often means learning when not to speak at all. There is a difference. A profound one. A wise person does not remain silent because they have nothing to say. They remain silent because not everything deserves a response. The greatest waste of strength is fighting battles that never belonged to you. Think about how much of your life has been spent reacting, explaining yourself, defending your character, trying to convince people who had already decided not to understand you. Every explanation was another piece of your peace given away. Every argument was another hour your mind could have spent becoming stronger. Every attempt to change someone else's opinion pulled you further away from your own center. And still, it was never enough. Because people determined to misunderstand you rarely need evidence. They need a story. And if reality does not support the story, they will create one. This realization hurts. But it also frees you. Because once you stop trying to control how others see you, you can finally begin seeing yourself clearly. Marcus Aurelius returned to this lesson repeatedly. You cannot govern another person's judgment. You can only govern your own characters. That sounds simple. Until someone lies about you. Until someone betrays your trust. Until someone questions your intentions. Then the ego awakens. It whispers. Defend yourself, make them understand. Show them who you really are. Sometimes that is necessary. Most of the time, it is not. Character reveals itself over time. Arguments rarely do. The truth walks quietly. Lies must keep running. There is an old story about two swordsmen. One challenged everyone he met. He shouted, boasted, demanded respect. The other walked through villages unnoticed. One day they crossed paths. The first swordsman laughed. "Fight me." The second continued walking. "You are afraid," still no response. The villagers mocked the quiet man for leaving. Years later, the loud swordsman was forgot. The quiet one became a master whose students traveled across kingdoms to learn from him. His greatest victory was not winning battles. It was refusing unnecessary ones. That is the difference between ego and mastery. Ego seeks recognition. Mastery seeks refinement. One asks, "Who noticed me?" The other asks, Who am I becoming? Those are completely different lives. Weak people chase visibility. A strong people pursue substance. One fades with attention. The other deepens with time. Look at an ancient mountains. It has stood through storms that destroyed forests. Empires have risen beneath it. Empires have fallen beneath it. The mountain never announced its strength. Time revealed it. Your character should be the same. Do not rush to prove it. Live it. Quietly. Patiently. Consistently. The strongest reputation is built in silence. Human psychology teaches us something fascinating. People often mistake emotional restraint for emotional absence. If you do not react, they assume you do not feel. Nothing could be further from the truth. The strongest people often feel everything. They simply choose carefully what deserves expression. A disciplined mind asks, will these words improve the situation? If the answer is no, silence becomes wisdom. This does not mean suppressing pain. Pain ignored becomes poison. It means processing pain before presenting it to the world. There is enormous dignity in that. Because emotions are temporary visitors. Words can become permanent scars. The Shaolin monks trained this discipline every single day. Not by avoiding emotions, by refusing to become its servant. Imagine holding a cup filled to the edge. Every sudden movement spills its contents. Now imagine a deep lake. The wind touches the surface. The depths remain undisturbed. Which one resembles your mind? Most people live like the cups. Every opinion spills them. Every inconvenience shakes them. Every criticism empties them. The disciplined person becomes the lake. Movement on the surface. A stillness underneath. This is emotional resilience. Not the absence of feeling. The presence of stability. There is another hidden reason silence frights weak people. Silence removes distraction. When two people stop speaking, the truth begins speaking. Suddenly they notice the distance in the relationship. The lack of trust. The absence of respect. The emotional emptiness they have covered with endless conversation. Many relationships survive only because nobody stops talking long enough to notice what is missing. Silence exposes the foundation. If the foundation is strong, silence feels peaceful. If the foundation is weak, silence feels unbearable. That is true not only in relationships with others. It is true in your relationship with yourself. Can you sit quietly without needing escape? Can you walk without reaching for your phone? Can you eat without constant stimulation? Can you simply exist without demanding entertainment every moment? If not, the problem is not silence. The problem is dependence. You do not fear silence. You fear meeting the person you become when the noise disappears. That sentence changes lives. Because once you understand it, you stop running. You begin listening. Listening to your thoughts. Listening to your habits. Listening to your fears. Listening to the quiet voice beneath all the noise that has been waiting patiently for years. It does not shout. Truth never does. It whispers. And only a quiet mind can hear it. Soon you begin to notice something extraordinary. Silence is no longer empty. It is full. Full of clarity. Full of strength. Full of direction. Full of peace. And once you discover that, the world loses one of its greatest weapons against you. Because no one can manipulate a person who has learned to enjoy their own silence. Yet there remains one final step. The highest form of silent strength. The place where silence is no longer protection, but freedom itself. The highest form of silence is not saying nothing. It is needing nothing. Nothing to prove. Nothing to defend. Nothing to chase. Nothing to force. That is the destination every Stoic, every Shaolin monk, every wise soul eventually reaches. Not perfection. Freedom. Most people believe freedom comes from changing the world around them. Finding the perfect relationship. The perfect career. The perfect circumstances. But life has a way of humbling those expectations. People leave. Health changes. Money comes and goes. Time takes everything it once gave. If your peace depends upon what can be taken away, then your peace was never truly yours. Marcus Aurelius understood this better than most. He ruled one of the greatest empires in history, yet every day he reminded himself of something simple. Everything external is temporary. Only your character remains. Only your choices remain. Only your response remains. That is why the Stoic never builds his identity on applause. Applause fades. He builds it upon virtue. And virtue cannot be stolen. The quieter your soul becomes, the less power the world has over you. Imagine two fires. One burns dry leaves. The smallest wind changes its direction. The other burns deep within a mountain furnace. Storms rage outside. Its flame remains steady. Most people spend their lives protecting the first fire. The wise spend their lives becoming the second. Silence is the furnace. It burns away the need to impress, the need to explain, the need to be understood by everyone. Little by little, your ego becomes smaller. Not your confidence. Your ego. Confidence whispers. Ego shouts. Confidence walks away. Ego demands the last word. Confidence accepts misunderstanding. Ego cannot survive it. Weak people fear silence because silence starves the ego. There is no audience. No applause. No argument to wins. Only the question that matters. Who are you when no one is watching? That question has terrified kings. It has humbled warriors. It has transformed monks. And it will transform you, if you are willing to answer it honestly. A Shaolin elder once told his disciples the purpose of training is not to defeat others. It is to stop being defeated by yourself. Those words contain a lifetime of wisdom. How often have you defeated yourself? By overthinking. By seeking approval. By replaying old conversations. By worrying about opinions that changed nothing. By giving strangers authority over your peace. The greatest battle was never outside. It was always within. And silence is where that battle is won. Not in one day, not in one moment, but through countless quiet decisions. Choosing not to react. Choosing not to argue. Choosing not to carry another person's anger. Choosing not to abandon your values because someone challenged them. These decisions seem small, yet they slowly reshape an entire life. A peaceful mind is built one restrained reaction at a time. There will still be criticism. Let it come. There will still be rejection. Let it come. There will still be people who misunderstand your intentions, question your motives, and invent stories about your life. Let them. Their opinions cannot define your character. Only your actions can. The mountain never descends because someone doubts its height. The river never turns back because someone questions its destination. The sun never delays its sunrise because someone prefers the dark. Nature fulfills its purpose without permission. So should you. One day, people may notice the change in you. They will say you have become calmer, harder to provoke, harder to manipulate, more peaceful. Some will admire it. Others will resent it. Neither response matters, because your transformation was never meant to impress them. It was meant to free you. There is a beautiful irony in this journey. At the beginning, you use silence to protect yourself from the world. At the end, you discover the world no longer needs protection from, because your peace no longer depends on its behavior. This is the inner fortress Marcus Aurelius wrote about without ever using those exact words. A place inside you where insults cannot enter unless invited, where fear cannot remain unless welcomed, where chaos arrives at the gate but never reaches the throne. That fortress is not built from stone. It is built from discipline, from awareness, from acceptance, from thousands of moments when you chose wisdom over impulse. The strongest person is not the one who speaks the loudest, but the one whose peace cannot be stolen. If you remember only one lesson from this message, let it be this: silence is not emptiness. Silence is mastery. It is the space where your emotions settle, where your thoughts become clear, where your character grows stronger than your circumstances, where your identity is no longer borrowed from the opinions of others. Stand there often. Protect that place. Return to it every day. Because the world will always invite you into noise, into outrage, into comparison, into endless reaction. You do not have to accept the invitation. You can choose another path. The quiet path. The disciplined path. The path of the warrior who no longer measures strength by volume, but by stability. Walk that path long enough, and one day you will notice something extraordinary. The silence that once frightened you has become your greatest companion. The loneliness you once feared has become solitude. The chaos that once controlled you has become background noise. And the peace you spent your whole life searching for was waiting inside the silence all along. If this message resonated with you, share below the lesson that spoke to you most. Stand firm. Remain calm. Protect your silence. And if you wish to continue walking the path of wisdom, discipline, and inner strength, join us here at Silent Strength. The quietest path is often the strongest one.